Buying ag commodities can be one of the more stressful things a farmer will do in any given year. But leveraging market intel and the right resources, such as flat storage and forward purchasing of fertilizer, can give you an advantage in how you manage your margins. Good evening to you and welcome to Rural America Live. I'm Tammy Arender. Tonight, experts from Accu-Steel and ADM are here to talk about the factors impacting the markets and strategies to manage commodities and leverage market fluctuations. Plus, they have a special giveaway tonight for several of you, so stick around to find out what that is. Right now, I want to welcome in Accu-Steel General Manager John Klehn and ADM Regional Sales Manager of Producer Origination, Mike Headlee, and the ADM Director of Fertilizer Sales, Brian Flaska. Guys, I appreciate you being here. Looking forward to the next hour. John, let's start with you. I know you've been on the show before. A lot of folks already know you, but reintroduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Accu-Steel.
Sure. Nice to see you again, Tammy, and thanks for having me back. Sure. John Klehn, General Manager of Accu-Steel. Accu-Steel is an American manufacturing company specializing in fabric-covered buildings and shade structures. While a good portion of our business is farm and ag related, over the last 22 years or so, we've expanded beyond that to everything from on-farm applications, from cattle barns and flat storage, all the way through warehousing and indoor sports facilities and the like. But at our core, one of our core tenets is that we're built around the American farmer. One of our manufacturing facilities is actually still on a century-old farm, and we're happy to be here and to help to hopefully provide some solutions around what your audience is looking for.
Right. Yeah. Talk about the relationship. You've invited ADM to join us tonight. Let's talk about that relationship.
Sure. You know, when I knew the topic was going to be around grain and fertilizer, I thought our friends at ADM would be a natural fit for that. You know, Accu-Steel tries to meet our customers where they're at with their storage needs, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is help them store things better and make their businesses and their farms more profitable, more efficient. And like I said, when I knew the topic was going to be around grain and fertilizer, I thought that ADM would be
best collaborators.
Best collaborators.
That's right. That's awesome. Mike, let's get to know you.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy, and thanks for having me on the show as well. Mike Headlee with ADM, born and raised in Houston, Texas, but have a good old Minnesota accent now. Keep moving farther and farther up north. Went to school in Ohio at Ohio State, and then started my career in a rotation program that started in North Dakota and then brought me where I'm based at today in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I lead producer origination for ADM in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin.
Right, yeah, you've definitely lost that Texas accent. I would have never known. I would have never known. Brian, introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening, Tammy. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. As you mentioned earlier, I'm the Director of Sales for ADM Fertilizer, which is really just a fancy way of saying I oversee our commercial sales activity for both the U.S. and Canada. ADM's got a unique value proposition that we bring to the fertilizer space. We partner with global manufacturers all over the world to access low-cost fertilizer products. And then we pair that with ADM's best-in-class comprehensive distribution system to help create value and bring affordability to fertilizer solutions to customers throughout the U.S. and in Canada.
Yeah, such a relevant topic and pertinent tonight because we have so many international conflicts going on. You've got volatile fuel prices, weather events, everything having an impact on our commodities markets and impacting our farmers' bottom line. So let's talk a little bit, Mike, about some of those global issues and maybe even issues back here at home that are having an impact on our farmers and what it means for them to make a profit these days.
Sure. And I think I'm going to break this question up kind of into two segments here. First off, from a global perspective, with all the geopolitical issues going on, whether that's in Russia and Ukraine or the uncertainty in the Middle East, I think one of the key focuses right now is the weather in South America. Over the past week, Brazil's received a lot of favorable rains, and looking forward the next 10-day forecast, they're going to continue to see these favorable rains, hit some of the areas that's going to produce a lot of the crop down there. Now, looking domestically in the U.S., we have a large carryout in corn, beans, and wheat, and it's trying to figure out how are we going to be competitive in the export business. And I think looking at a weather perspective from the U.S. side of things is you're starting to see a lot of this El Nino effect hit, part of the northern half of the U.S. And I think a good example is I went back to Texas for the winter break to go see family, and it was actually colder in Houston and on Christmas Eve than back in Minneapolis, and I was trying to escape the cold. So it's just trying to figure out, how the weather is going to affect us and how logistics and how to continue to stay competitive for the farmer.
All of those things impacting how our farmers are having to make such different choices these days is what I'm seeing, because all of these things are having an impact on them. Brian, let's talk about you, because we're looking now at crude oil prices, natural gas. They have come down a little bit from their highs. Do you think that's going to have an impact on a farmer's bottom line? Because I know that has an impact on how fertilizers are made.
Yeah, they're all intertwined, so it's a great observation, Tammy. Specifically on energy, across the globe system, we have actually seen those prices start to stabilize closer to pre-conflict levels. A really good example of how energy can impact the price of fertilizer. Take nitrogen, for example. Natural gas, it's the number one cost component to producing nitrogens, ammonia specifically, which of course then gets upgraded into both urea and then into UAN. So we're always watching that, and typically you will see a correlation between energy prices and fertilizer production costs, which of course leads to what are farmers paying for products in their local area. But it's much more expansive than that there, Tammy. I think some other things that end users really should be paying attention to. What does my local supplier have on stock for me? Do they have it when they need it? How are the farming economics playing? We all know that if the farmers aren't making money, we're going to see everything start to curtail and come back a little bit. Also, how are the logistics situations? Are we seeing interruptions on the river system or on the rail system? So I think energy plays a role in what the farmers will pay at the farm gate, but I think it's important to call to attention some of these other factors that they should be paying attention to understand how the price is being put together.
Right. It's interesting you bring that up, because I know a lot of farmers, they made some tough decisions when fertilizer prices were that high. They were like, hey, there's only so much in my bank account, so we've got to make a decision to adjust to that. But hopefully we're seeing a little bit of relief. John, I wanted to ask you, I know that another commodity that farmers aren't always thinking about is steel and aluminum. What are we looking at there in the metals market? Is that having an impact on what we're doing?
Sure. Steel's part in our name, right? So I know a little bit about it. So what I would say kind of more holistically is, the input costs or the prices from 3 or 4 years ago are gone, whether that is an Accu-Steel building or to a toothpaste or kind of anywhere in between, right? And I would say that over the last 18 to 24 months, with prices kind of leveling out from an input standpoint to some degree, and people being a little bit more accustomed to the increased cost of money, that what we're seeing anyway in our space is the people finding what their new norm is, what the new water level is, and baking that into their decision-making process. Right. So where there might have been a little bit of hesitancy around like where interest rates going to land and that sort of thing, or am I buying at the right time, regardless of kind of the input or the commodity. What I'm seeing now is that people are starting to come out the other side of that and understanding kind of what the new norms are and making decisions based off of that.
Right, yeah, new normal. We came up with that phrase, didn't we, during COVID, and it has stuck. Mike, let's talk a little bit, too, about what commodity products you think pose the biggest risk at this point for our farmers.
Yeah, I think some of the commodities that are kind of at most risk here is probably, corn, beans, and wheat. If you start looking at, kind of like I said earlier, where the carryout numbers are at, you got a 2.1 billion bushel corn ending stocks number, you got 245 million bushels of beans out there and 659 million bushels of wheat. So it's trying to get back to, where is this going to go? And I think, one key factor that is coming up is we got a WASDE report on Jan 12th. So that's going to be the WASDE report and the grain stock. So being cognizant that that's going to be a market mover, and that will be a key kind of player here coming up at 11 a.m. on Friday. So
Yeah, looking forward to that. Of course, we always have that kind of breaking news here, right here on RFD TV, so look for that. One other thing I want to talk about, and I'll start with you, John, looking at the global conflicts. Some of these foreign countries, you know, they're major players in the fertilizer department. What are we doing on this side, right here in our homeland, to make sure that our farmers have the products they need here in North America?
Sure, great question, Tammy, thank you. So from an Accu-Steel perspective, what our job is, in the conversations we have with farmers and folks in the ag community every day, and even outside the ag community, but specific to the ag community, is what can we do to limit your risk and maximize your flexibility? So an example of that might be, what can we do so farmers, ranchers, and the like can buy the commodities and buy the product that they need when they need it, and how can we maximize flexibility? So from an Accu-Steel standpoint, what that means is, if flat storage makes sense for a farmer or a business, we're giving them the opportunity to buy when they can buy, and then use that flat storage for storing that product, but also give them the flexibility to either expand on that business, expand on that storage capacity, or store something other than fertilizer or grain too. My business partner also says, you can't park your combine in your grain bin. So the point of that is, sometimes in certain applications, flat storage might make sense because it helps to increase the flexibility of the decisions that the farmer or the business can make.
Right. Brian, do you want to weigh in on this too?
Yeah. So from my vantage point, I want to make sure we give assurance to the market out there so they understand that, hey, fundamentally, we're going to have adequate supply that's on fertilizer inputs that's going to be required to raise the 2024 crop. Some of the things that the North American players in this space are doing to kind of combat some of those noise, we'll call it, outside of the U.S. as well as here domestically. From a nitrogen standpoint, the U.S. will continue to be a source of liquidity for foreign production, given the strength of the U.S. dollar. I don't see much deviation from the norm from what we've been importing the last handful of years, some iteration of 5 million tons of urea. From a phosphate standpoint, it's my expectation that the U.S. will continue to behave normally and continue to export what it has been exporting the last couple of years. And that's why it's so important to identify who you're going to partner with. Looking at companies like ADM who have those capabilities and have those foreign relationships and partnerships built, but then also have the means to bring it to the market and bring it to the retailer and thus to the farmer. Those are some of the things that we're doing to help mitigate some of that risk. But one other thing that ties back into what John's doing with Accu-Steel is understanding that, hey, what can we do on farm to help solve some of that and manage some of that risk? Well, when you have on-farm storage, you inherently are helping to mitigate some of that logistical risk because you have the capabilities of storing that product maybe before some of these other challenges could come into play, whether it be weather, delay in execution, supply shortages, or interruptions in supply, any of the above. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but those are a couple of things that I'm looking at when I'm trying to assess, hey, how can we help manage that risk?
Well, and here's what I like about what you guys are doing. We're not just talking about the problem, you're offering solutions. And that's what we're here to do, is say, hey, we know we've got challenges in the marketplace, but we can help. You brought up logistics earlier. Let's go back to that, because there's been a huge concern, whether it's rail, river, however, getting products from point A to point B these days can be tough. What are your thoughts on where we are with that right now?
Yeah, again, that's why I'm proud to work for a company like ADM, because we have that dynamic, expansive global system. We control our own ocean-going vessels. We have our own stevedoring and barge operation in ArtCo. We have our own terminals up and down the river system and throughout the U.S. We have our own private fleet of rail cars. We have contract truckers that we work with day in and day out. By controlling that supply chain, we really manage that risk really well, and we can provide that assurance to the market. Now, when I look at vessels, we were pretty much unscathed by the hurricane season that we went through this fall. So from ADM's perspective, we're in a really good space from our vessels landing into North America ahead of the spring application season. From a barge standpoint, that's one thing we're going to have to watch. I don't know about you guys, but when I look out my back window, I don't have any snow there, Tammy. We need
that snowpack going.
We do. We need more water to hit the river system. We're operating at below normal levels. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have access to it, Tammy. What it means is the system won't be able to operate as efficiently as it otherwise would have. That means the farmers will still be able to access those products. We're just adding costs when we have some of those inefficiencies within the market structure.
You know, it's interesting. I was raised on a farm in a little town called Tallulah, Louisiana. It backed up to the Vicksburg, Mississippi River Bridge. And so I remember as a kid coming across that. When I went home for Christmas, I'd never seen it that low.
Yeah.
I mean, it's making it very difficult.
Now, one thing two things that Brian commented on that I'll probably my own comment for. My wife texted me right before he came on the show, and there's definitely snow on the ground in Iowa now.
Okay, you've got that confirmed. Okay, your meteorologist, your wife.
I think the storm is here, and we've gone through logistics of how we're going to plow the lot and whatnot at the factory,
right, yeah.
and that sort of thing. But the other thing we were talking about specifically around logistics was a conversation that we have with our customers all the time is trying to lock in variables. So as farmers, ranchers, and other folks in the ag community are trying to kind of forecast where they're going to be from a business standpoint and from a dollars and cents standpoint, sometimes even if you're not locking in at the very, very lowest, you think you got the best deal ever. Sometimes it's just as important to lock that in so you can do the rest of the math down the road, right?
Right.
So
you need a number to work with.
Yeah, you need a number to work with. So something that we talk about a lot with our customers is that trying to limiting the risk, but also trying to lock in what we can control too.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say, farmers never forget. And that's the crazy thing is, talking about the river logistics, it wasn't too long ago back in 1819 when, the first barge didn't come up until July. And usually river open up in the upper Mississippi is typically last half March, first half April. And so if you see any bottlenecks or hiccups in the river system or with any, rail system, you're going to see, freight costs increase. You're going to see changes in basis levels, and that's going to make it more difficult for guys to make market decisions.
Right.
So,
can I try one more with this too? One more thing to piggyback on what Mike was talking through. That's where it becomes paramount of understanding of who you're working with. I remember 2019 very vividly. A lot of gray hair was caused by that. But, again, that's where it's important to understand when you're talking with your supply partners, whether it be ADM or supplier X, Y, or Z, is to understand, hey, what is plan B when we run into issues? Because we're going to run into issues, but who's got the flexibility? Who's got the multiple modes of transportation? Who can access unit trains, single cars, trucks, barges? Who's got multiple distribution points where, hey, if we have an outage or we're negatively impacted by low water levels, who's got the flexibility to really support my operation in times when we get challenged?
Sometimes it's always about options.
That's
you got to
right.
have options and plan B or C. Let's talk about transparency in the marketplace. Farmers are used to trading commodities, the commodities markets. What about a commodity fertilizer market, and have that transparency there with those market prices?
I think that's one thing the market will unequivocally say is probably one of the best features we bring to the market, is that we do offer pricing transparency. We're very transparent in how we structure our pricing. The other piece too is we offer forward pricing, 12 months out through our channels. And what that allows the market to do is to buy when it's right for them, as opposed to telling the market when they should be buying. And when you've got solutions in place, like storage, for example, now that puts the onus into the buyer's hands and the power into the buyer's hands to say, hey, I want to sell some grain. Maybe I can lock in some margin by buying my inputs. By offering 12 months out of the year, they can take advantage of what we often will experience during the fill periods when manufacturers are moving product away from their production points outside of the peak demand season. It also enables the farmers or retailers to take advantage of lower cost distribution economics. Inherently, the cost to move 1 ton of fertilizer through the system is much less expensive in the off season than it is in the in-season, Captain Obvious,
Timing.
right? So again, being able to provide those solutions to help manage that risk, that's some of the solutions that we offer through the transparency of our pricing and some of the benefits of having transparent pricing.
All right, definitely an advantage there. All right, guys, we're going to take a break, but before we go, we are going to open our phone lines. That number is 877-731-6733, and you can call in with your questions. And 3 lucky on-air callers will win some swag from ADM tonight. That includes a backpack, a water bottle, and some golf balls. All right, that they're going to have to hang on to till spring, right? Even if you live in Houston. Right. Yeah, not going to be golfing weather, but also you get a hat and a shirt. All you have to do is call in and ask your question live, and you could be a winner. Once again, that number, 877-731-6733. More Rural America Live with Accu-Steel and ADM when we come back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Rural America Live. I'm Tammy Arender. We're here with Accu-Steel and ADM. Our phone lines are open, and you are a big part of this show. We want to hear from you. 877-731-6733. And you could be a lucky winner. We've got a swag bag from ADM with a backpack, a water bottle, golf balls, hat, and shirt. All you have to do is call in, ask your question live, and you could be a winner. All right, guys, let's get back into our subject at hand here. And I know that with all the uncertainties here in the commodities markets between logistics, weather, everything impacting it, what can our farmers do? And I know this isn't an easy answer, but I just want to get your take on it. What can farmers do to stay current and, with the current prices and kind of hedge against their risk and do something that's going to make them some money at the end of the season? Start with you.
Sure. So I think the first thing that farmers can do to help manage some of that risk is partner with entities like ADM and my counterpart and Mike, and understand that, hey, we have personnel on staff that can help you with some of your grain marketing. We've got solutions in place to help you manage some of your fertilizer and input risks, and some of the solutions that ADM can provide for the farmers and the retailers is providing input solution financing, forward pricing, working with companies like Accu-Steel to provide storage solutions. So those are a couple of things that, from my vantage point, that we can do to help manage some of that risk.
Mike?
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off that, I think, from a farmer perspective, it's kind of starting at, ground zero. What is your break-even levels? Once you can kind of understand that and where to go from that, then you can make better decisions on managing your risk, when to layer off sales. And then that can help make decisions on fertilizer purchasing. And then making a long-term plan of how do I expand my storage with someone like Accu-Steel. And I think when you can start looking at a lot of those key decision makings, that can help a farmer talk to a grain marketer, make a long-term plan, and put offers in the system to, be participating in the market. Because more likely than not, usually the market's, moving on the overnights, and sometimes it's higher. And by the time you call your local rep, it's already gone.
It's changed. Yeah, it's changed. John, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think, as you can tell, I think just kind of naturally the conversation has gone into what can we do to manage risk and what can we do to increase the flexibility and the ability for the customers, the farmers, ranchers, and folks in the ag community to make the best decision for them, right? And so, again, like I said before, that's a conversation that we have every day, whether it's flat storage or it's vertical storage or it's something else from kind of from our world. What we want to do is understand and help the farmer understand what that risk might look like for them and what that unique kind of business model looks like for them, and then hopefully provide some consultation of how they might be able to manage that.
Well, and you can walk through that with them because probably every operation's different and has a different need. So you can kind of say, hey, here's step 1, 2, and 3 that we can go that benefits you.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because, we, as I've seen some of the B-roll going on and the background here, some of, and they were showing some of our larger buildings and that sort of thing. But, some folks want to store maybe a couple hundred tons of fertilizer on farm, and we have all kinds of folks that we partner with on those things for on farm, or some folks for different applications want to store 15, 20, 25,000 tons of fertilizer, and that solution obviously looks a little bit different, right? And so what I think kind of a theme of this conversation is find partners that want to meet you where you're at, right? We're not trying to shoehorn
Not just trying
anybody.
to sell you something,
Yeah,
right? We want to get you what you need.
That's right. That's right.
Very good. All right, we've got our first caller. We've got Nick from Minnesota. Nick, what's your question?
Hi. So my question is, what trends are you guys the most focused on, and what are you doing to kind of prepare yourselves for them?
Yeah, great question there, Nick. Appreciate the call. One of the biggest trends that we're facing right now in the fertilizer space and really the agricultural space, if I may add, is we're seeing this behavior change take place. We're feeling pressure, whether it be economic pressure, social pressure, political pressure, to produce more food, but not only more food, Tammy, but more sustainably. And so what does that mean? Doesn't mean we're going to get away from your traditional NPKs. What it means is we probably need to look at how we're producing food today, but also how we're looking at producing food for tomorrow and what solutions are going to be available in mass. A really good example of one thing that ADM is doing to help forward look into this conundrum is we partner with Anglo American to be the sole distributor of Poly4 throughout North America. Poly4 in a nutshell is a low chloride, multi-nutrient, dry granular fertilizer product. But when it's commercially available, it'll have the lowest carbon footprint of any commercially fertilizer produced in the world, bar none. And so in addition to solving the sustainability issue, we've also seen tremendous yield uplift and performance at the farm gate. So not only is it good for the environment, but it's also at the end of the day going to make the farmer more money because we believe it'll create a better return at the farm gate.
Wow, yeah, that is impressive. I know we want to know more about that. Nick, thank you for calling in. Thank you for that question. How would a farmer know if on-farm storage is actually right for their operation? Is there like a minimum amount of fertilizer that they want to keep on their farm? Is there a number?
So that's the beautiful thing about the space that we play in there, Tammy, is that we're a bit size agnostic. Meaning I think you need to look at each farm operation individually. And you made a great point of that. We're not a one-size-fits-all. We're not the right fit for everybody. And so I think farmers need to take a holistic look at their operation and understand, hey, do the long-term benefits make sense for my farm operation? Do I want to be able to take advantage of some of those market swings that inevitably commodity world is going to impact? Do I want to take on that risk myself, or do I want to have a partner manage that risk for me? These are all factors I think end users need to factor in when they're making decisions. And hey, does this make sense for my farm operation?
John, you got thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I don't think there's a one size fits all like we've kind of said. And I don't think there's a bare minimum or bare maximum. I think it's really because we've seen some producers and some farmers commission one of our buildings and use that as to share across multiple farms, right? And then we've seen others that are one specific for them, or we've seen, like I said, some that want to store maybe 100 tons of fertilizer and some that want to store 30,000 tons of fertilizer, right, and anywhere in between. And the flexibility isn't just in the size of the capacity, but how they want to go about what their operation looks like. How are they loading the building? Are they loading it with a wheel loader? Do they have conveyors or conveyance? Are they blending on the inside or the outside of the building? Do they need a drive alley for their semi based on it? We're doing a project in Missouri right now, and one of the key components of the design process was the gentleman wanted his wife to be able to see the blending equipment when she was driving the semi through the drive alley. So we had to adjust the height of it, So it's something different for everybody.
It can be down to that minute of a detail,
right,
that you can make that happen. That is awesome. We do want to give that number one more time if you'd like to call in, 877-731-6733. And we do have a caller on the line. We have Pat from Texas. Pat, how are you? What's your question?
Hello. My question is ADM prominent in selling fertilizer in Texas, and the delivery basis could be rail, it could be truck, or it could be even barge south of here. And do they have anhydrous for an option for the nitrogen side?
Great. Thanks for the question. So the short answer is yes, ADM Fertilizer does have the capabilities to bring fertilizer into the Texas market. We do offer a full array suite of products inclusive of ammonia. So if this is something that makes sense to you or you're interested in further pursuing, what I would encourage you to do is to go onto our website and understand who the local sales rep is, and they can get you connected with the right process. And we'd love to explore the opportunity to see if ADM can add value to your operation.
All right, and Pat, by the way, was a winner tonight, got that swag bag. We appreciate you calling in. We'd love to hear from you as well. John, let's go back to you. You had mentioned the flat storage. Yeah. Who is that good for? What are the advantages? Let's talk about that.
Sure, like, I keep saying risk and flexibility. So flat storage might not be perfect for everybody. We have plenty of friends in the vertical storage market, and sometimes that's a better solution. Where Accu-Steel can really provide some advantage, and our type of structures can provide some advantage, is where they want the flexibility and not just storing their fertilizer and their grain, but other products as well, whether it's equipment or likewise, right? We've got some built-in advantages to our structures, such as the translucency of the fabric and the natural light. So flat storage. We are, as much as anything, a storage company, right? And so we're trying to limit the risk and increase the flexibility through storage and through storage solutions. So there's not a one size fits all, but if your building's empty, you can use it for something else, right? If you use the product for the year and or it's lower, you can use it for something else. So that's where kind of flat storage kind of has some advantages.
Right, and just need to evaluate that, and we'll go into that in just a little bit. But we want to go to North Carolina now. Jimmy, what's your question?
The question is on the fertilizer storage. If it's in loose bulk, what kind of steel is the building using so the fertilizer won't eat it up? Is it stainless steel, or is it just black steel, or what, mild steel, or what? Yes.
Yeah, that's for me. That's my question. Jimmy, thanks for the question. So Accu-Steel buildings, all Accu-Steel buildings, or the vast majority of buildings, but definitely anything that's going to be used for fertilizer or another highly corrosive environment, all of our steel is hot dip galvanized, so that reduces or eliminates the risk of corrosion. The reason that we hot dip galvanize product or galvanize our steel is because hot dip galvanization is actually a chemical bond onto the steel that significantly limits the risk of any sort of rust or corrosion. Additionally, we treat parts of our building with an additional corrosion-resistant material.
All right, Jimmy, thank you. Hopefully that answered your question. Congratulations, you're a winner as well. Let's go back to the flat storage. I'm intrigued by that and kind of who's a good customer for that. Mm-hmm. Is it also easy to load and unload out of the flat storage?
Yeah, per kind of my previous comments, everybody is going to load and unload their building a little bit differently. So if either myself or somebody else on the team is engaging with a farmer, rancher, or customer, one of the first things we always ask them is, how are you loading your building? And sometimes they're like, I don't know, you tell me, right?
Right.
and sometimes they'll be like, hey, I've got this type of wheel loader, so I'm thinking about just dumping it outside and pushing it in. Some folks will say, I've got 3 different products that I've got, 1,000 tons and 500 tons and 500 tons in different bays, and I want to drive through. So one of the, I think Brian or Mike mentioned, like, we're not trying to shoehorn anybody into a solution. While for sure we have all kinds of pre-engineered and kind of standard profiles of our buildings, especially in the commodity space and especially in the fertilizer space. Every building, even though it might look the same on the outside, is manufactured just a little bit differently based on how they want to load the building, how many products are in the building, what their outlook for expansion is, those sort of things.
And that's where that conversation on the outset, that is so critical to explain to that and look down the road for the use so that you get exactly what you need.
Yeah, folks sometimes I ask a lot of questions up front.
Right, but that's a good thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're taking up some of my time, but it actually pays off in the end.
Yeah.
So it goes one size doesn't fit all. Let's talk about the advantages of the fabric covered building as far as storing grain and fertilizer.
Sure, yeah. So one of the advantages of the fabric cover building is there's, in our type of product, there's never any support beams in the middle. So it's completely free span from one side of the building to the other. So so when you're handling, when you have equipment handling inside there, when you're moving around a skid steer or a wheel loader or something like that, you never have to worry about support beams. The other advantage is the natural light. Natural light is a major component of our value proposition for our type of building. So whatever the light is outside, you're going to get the vast majority of that through the building. You're not going to get the UV rays through the building, but you're going to benefit from the natural light. So being able to work in a bright, safe environment, especially when you're handling commodities, is one of the advantages of our style of building.
You don't have to hang a bunch of lights in there and have all that just to see, because that building is going to allow that natural light in, right?
Yeah, that's right. The vast majority many of our buildings don't have any electricity run through them at all. They're fully kind of self-contained.
So that's a cost-saving measure right there.
Sure.
But you could have it if you wanted to.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
All right. Need to answer that question as well, because some people might want that. Hey, my dad used to work at night and after dark,
Right.
So he may have wanted some lights in there. Talk a little bit about ADM. I know you guys are strategically located all over, but let's talk about that logistics issue again, that piece of the puzzle, and how somebody can manage getting the distance there and getting to and from an ADM terminal, whether they're storing grain on their property or not.
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit, and then I'll pass it over to my esteemed colleague. Again, I go back to what we touched a little bit on, is when you're partnering with your fertilizer supplier, who is the logistics expert? Who's got those capabilities? When I look at ADM, we do have those capabilities to deliver the final mile to that final farm gate for you. And then when you couple that with providing a storage solution like Accu-Steel, all of a sudden you've really helped manage a lot of that risk for that end user, because you've now tied in the final mile logistics along with the storability. But I want to touch one more piece on the Accu-Steel and the storability too. One thing I've learned in my brief 18 years, I know that's not a long time in the industry, in the ag industry, but in 18 years, one thing that I know 100% certainty, farmers are always looking forward. They're always looking at ways to improve their operation. And what I think we can accomplish here, and some of the synergies between Accu-Steel and ADM, is that we provide the opportunity for the end user to put into a shed with what is best for his operation. With some of the advances within technology, with new products coming to market, with some precision ag starting to come to surface, there are ways for the end user to optimize the inputs that he's putting into the ground. But he needs some of these tools within his tool chest to optimize that. And so again, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it holistically. How can we be a total supplier and a solutions-based enterprise for that end user?
And I think to expand on that as well from Brian, I'm going to kind of go back to a keynote from John, is we have to ask questions to the farmer to really understand, what they want. And a lot of times I've talked to customers and gave them outlets of, hey, did you know this facility was, maybe 130 miles, south of you, but it makes sense from a freight spread perspective. And there's been great movement where sometimes it didn't make sense at certain times of the year, but then it does. And then guys don't forget that, hey, there's a location out there that maybe if it's the right opportunity, that it can spread there. So really informing the producer, hey, this is where some of our assets are located, and maybe this can be where it goes, and then they figure out, this is a good opportunity for me next time as well.
Right.
So
just explore and take a look, see what's around you in your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the advantages of actually like the way you guys have come together. So you're explaining, let's store this fertilizer on property, on farm. Biggest advantage to that?
flexibility and creating additional ways to optimize the operation and add value to the operation in a nutshell. Again, being able to capitalize on 12-month forward pricing, having the ability to store a product to ensure that you've got it when you need it, being able to ensure that you've got the right product mix for your particular farm, eliminating some of the logistics risk tied to having that on enterprise operation as opposed to in a barge or in a vessel. Those are all ways that we help the end user manage some of their risk. That would be the biggest benefit, Tammy.
All right, good information. All right, we're going to take another quick break, and those phone lines are open. We would love to hear from you. 877-731-6733, and we still have a swag bag to give away from ADM, so you could be a winner as well. Just give us a call. We have a question for our experts here. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Rural America Live with Accu-Steel and ADM. We do still have a swag bag to give away, and our phone lines are open. That phone number, 877-731-6733. As a matter of fact, we have a caller right now. We have Sarah from Minnesota. Sarah, what's your question?
Hey, what do you think some of the biggest challenges farmers are facing today?
Yeah, I can take that one for you guys. So I'd say, kind of breaking that question down, kind of looking at it from a change perspective. So if you look at technology adoption, I think that's something that you look at the past 10 years, 5 years, even the past 2 years, how rapid technology has changed, and trying to understand how you can add that to your operation. And I think a lot of it kind of comes from, Brian, myself, and John, and giving and informing, what's available out there, what can help with your operation, because something a farmer doesn't have is time value. I don't think I've ever had a farmer call me and say, hey, Mike, I have so much time on my hands, I'm just sitting here. It's more of, hey, Mike, I need you on the farm to help me out because I need to do A, B, C, D, E. So really trying to talk to a lot of your reps and understanding, hey, what's available out there on the technological piece, because it's evolving so much. And sometimes, it is made simple. You just need someone to kind of help show you the ways. So I think a good example is, we have some ADM maps out there that can help show your contracts, your shipments, and so instead of going the old school, kind of like my grandpa still farming and having the books all in one little spreadsheet. So that can help a lot of your efficiencies today to kind of focus on other things around the operation.
Yeah, I would add to that, Mike, not unlike the rest of the world, sometimes there can be information overload where, we're trying to provide as much data as we can so our customers can make an informed decision. But so, working with folks and working with people that you trust that can help simplify your decision for you, I think is really critical, as decisions seem to have to be made faster and faster and faster.
Right. Always smart to surround yourself with smart people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That way you get good information as you go along. One of the things you brought up earlier, Brian, talking about what ADM offers as far as their direct, farm direct fertilizer program where they can actually buy their nutrients like 12 months in advance. Let's talk about that and the timing. What is most beneficial to a farmer as far as timing of buying and taking delivery of that fertilizer?
Yeah, and what I'd like to clarify too, with that price offering 12 months forward, that's to the whole market. That's not segmented to one particular channel. But what that provides the end user the flexibility to do is to optimize the buying when it's right for him. In the farmer situation, it could be, hey, he is selling his grain and wants to lock in a portion of his margin by locking in some of his input costs. That could be one aspect. Another aspect could be we've got a promotional program running to help clear some of the off-season production that is coming in through the system that we need to clear, that we'll partner with large retail partners of ours to help clear and make sure that there's some value in it for them. But really, when you have 12-month forward pricing, what it does is it puts the power back into the buyer, as opposed to the seller telling him, hey, you need to buy this because we have this now or we're not going to have it.
Does that align with grain as well? You're talking, yeah.
Yeah, I won't speak for Mike, but maybe you can talk about some of the programs that you've got on the grain side of it. But from a fertilizer standpoint, I think when you have more flexibility along with transparency, now all of a sudden you're creating some value and you're changing some of the behavior within the fertilizer industry.
All right. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, one of the things, like you talk programs, I think it's it's almost like too much information overload at points. There's too many different ways to do it, and it's kind of getting back to the simplistic of, all right, let's understand, what do you know and what do you not know? Do we start off, you've done cash contracts all your life. Do you kind of evolve it and kind of talk to your local rep and talk, how do you just break down an HTA? How do you do just a basis contract? How can I add value to maybe, instead of doing it the old way, what's maybe the new way? Because I think there's a lot of advantages out there. And then once you can kind of hit the ground running from there, trying to expand that and seeing how you can kind of keep improving.
All right, very good. All right, let's go to Indiana now. What's your question to this evening?
Yes, I was wondering what other products ADM offers other than just commercial fertilizers.
Thanks for the call, caller. So it's an interesting comment, or question rather, because historically we've looked at the fertilizer space just in your traditional NPK sense. And make no mistake, traditional NPKs and the macronutrients will continue to play a massive role in solving global food security and efficient food production. But what we're starting to understand, because of some of the behavior changes that we're experiencing at the consumer level, that's telling us we need to produce more food, more efficient. And so the onus then becomes on the market players to incorporate products into their portfolios that align with what the market is asking for. And so in addition or adjacent to the traditional NPK suite of products that you would expect to see within the portfolio, we've incorporated 3 new products that I want to touch base on. We already talked about Poly4, which is the multi-nutrient dry granular product that's just a couple years away that ADM does have exclusivity on. But when available, it will have the lowest carbon footprint of any commercially produced fertilizer in the world. Another one I want to talk about is the biological space. The simplistic way to look at it is we offer 2 products. One is the bugs that stimulate, and one is the Gatorade that stimulates the bugs within our NeoVita proprietary biological product, as well as the NeoVita product. Both increase nutrient use efficiency and also boost the yields. So again, here are 3 solutions that ADM has looked at and understood that, hey, consumer behavior is changing. We have to evolve with it. But it's more than just talking about it. We're taking action on to incorporate these products to fit that narrative. Thanks for the question, caller.
Yeah, Jeremy, thank you so much for calling in from Indiana. Let's go into the regenerative agriculture space, because I understand that ADM now has products along that line, and that's become such a buzzword, but it's not just a buzzword. It's what people want to do to help regenerate the soil. But let's deep dive into that.
Yeah, so sustainability and regenerative ag is, like you said, a key topic in all industries today. Many consumers and ADM customers value carbon reductions through regenerative ag practices, and they're willing to pay for it. ADM developed regenerations program to reward farmers that have adopted these practices, and through increased efforts to focus on these regenerative ag practices from the farm gate level through the value chain. Some of them are cover crops, no-till, ISCC, and emission scoring are some of the qualifying practices. And I think if you have any questions or any interest, reach out to your local ADM rep and we'll try to push you in the right direction to qualify.
Definitely a great conversation to have. I know that's the kind of farming my niece wants to do. Her father, her grandfather, my dad, they farm the traditional way, but she's really wanting to go all in on getting into the regenerative farming space. And so I love that you guys are offering that. Talk about some of the other programs that you guys offer, and how can farmers get engaged? Where do they go from here after they turn the TV off tonight?
Sure. Well, I think it starts with doing an assessment of what your needs are and what the individual farmer pain points are, and then backing into what that solution might be, right? So, hey, I know I want to be able to have more control over some of my input costs, whether it's grain or fertilizer or something else, right? Or I want to have more control over this input cost. Is a storage solution right for me? And what type of storage solution right for me? Is it a vertical storage? Is it flat storage? Is it something else? So for next steps for farmers or anybody watching tonight, I would say that let's have a conversation about what your needs are, what your pain points are, and back into the solution that's right for you. Because what I always tell everybody on our team, anyway, the Accu-Steel standpoint is, if we can't help them, tell them that right away too, right? You know what I mean? So we I mentioned it before. One of our manufacturing facilities is still on a century-old farm that is on the original ownership group's farm, right? And so we're always going to be built around making good decisions for the American farmer. So I would say, leverage folks that you think can help you.
Yeah, and sit down and have that evaluation conversation there on the outset. I love the fact that you said, and we'll be honest with you, if we can't help you, we're not going to try and sell you anything.
Right.
I love the integrity of that. We're now, we're just in January, but so many farmers getting ready for this next season, trying to make these decisions. Let's talk about the timing of that and fertilizer and storage. And when do they need to start kind of putting pen to paper and figuring out when to do these things?
Yeah, it's a great question there, Tammy. I think if I was in their shoes, what I would start to look at is, what are my needs and understanding what I have left to buy. And the reason for that is the opportunities that present themselves happen really quick. And they could be there for a day, they could be there for 2 days. But if you haven't done your self-scouting to understand what my needs are, it's tough to take advantage of that, because by the time word circulates that programs are available out there, you will have missed it. The second piece is you have to put yourself in a position to take advantage of those opportunities. One route to that could be partnering with an entity like Accu-Steel to put on-farm storage. Another solution for that could be partnering with ADM to provide insight on, hey, how can they handle my transportation needs to take advantage of these opportune times? Because typically what we'll see is, coming out of the times of high demand, i.e. spring, i.e. fall, manufacturers will still need to clear their production. And they'll rely on partners like ADM and some of our industry peers to help move that tonnage. And that's where we'll start to cascade that down throughout the system.
And I guess a question that if they're like, hey, I want one of those buildings right now, how soon would they get it?
Sure, it depends on the building. I'll tell you that, right? But we have product available today, right? So we have standard product that's available in all sizes and shapes of buildings. I would encourage folks to visit our website, get an idea of what they're, they might be able to back in what size building they might need. There's all kinds of different profiles and products on there. And then give us a call or reach out via our website. We've got all kinds of experts internally, because it might not be like, they might not know the size of building they need for what their storage capacities is. We have all kinds of math and calculators where we can help them back into what might make sense for them from a size and shape of building.
All right, very good. We've only got about 2 minutes left. Let's get some final thoughts. Or actually, I was just told we just have 1 minute. So everybody gets about 15 seconds, because I get to say goodbye, right? All right, let's start with you, Brian.
I'll make it quick. Final message to the audience is, listen, farmer behaviors are constantly changing. ADM offers a suite of products and solutions to help fit some of those changes that the market is going through.
Mike?
Yeah, understand what your break-even levels are. Start there. If you have any questions, whether it's sustainability, different types of grain contracts, visit admadvantage.com, and a lot of the information will be there to help answer you.
And there you're looking at a map showing all the locations, and then of course the website anybody can go to at any time. So 20 seconds, final thoughts, Mike, John.
Accu-Steel is built around the American farmer. We want to provide risk mitigation and flexibility for those farmers. We'll help in any way we can.
I love that. Thank you so much, guys. You have been awesome. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time on Rural America Live.